Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 80, what is it, 3, I think, of the Daniel 3 podcast. Thanks for tuning in. A little bit of a last minute. I feel bad because I haven't put anything out in a while and I'm trying to get back to more regular episodes. So I managed to nab a nast. Can't speak tonight. I just did a podcast before this, so I already used up all of my brain energy. I got a last minute podcast guest to come on, who's a good friend of mine. First, of course, as always, I have to plug my sponsor, which is Rabbit Eye Blueberry Wine. If Jesus was walking the earth today and turning water into wine, it would be Rabbit Eye Blueberry Wine. And yeah, you can check that out at rabbiteyewine.com. Good friend Will Bell down in Georgia, fellow Mises Caucus member. So support a libertarian small business and farmer. And listen, even if you don't like wine, because I don't like wine, but I actually really like the blueberry wine because it's just better. So that's it. My guest for tonight is someone I don't even know how to introduce. He is one of my very close personal friends, and at the same time, I think he's probably the person who, if I was going to count up all of the names that I've been called in my entire life, he's probably competing for first place in that, in terms of being just like the absolute worst bully possible. This is my good friend Konstantin, fellow Meacock here in Pennsylvania. Konstantin, how are you doing tonight?
I am fantastic. That is an accurate statement.
It's a very accurate statement. I can't tell if like I'm just a glutton for punishment or if I just have a good sense of humor. I like to tell myself it's the second.
I don't know. What does your therapist think?
I don't talk to my therapist about libertarian stuff because I feel like he would just think I'm crazy.
Listen, this guy's just so mean to me, and then I just keep hanging out with him.
Yeah, I don't know. What can I say? You've technically been on the show before, although it's been a while. It's the first time you showed up with your face because the last time you I don't know, I wasn't good enough back then. So
I don't think I was wearing pants. That might have been the case.
I don't know if that's necessary for you to show your face, but I'm wearing pants right now. Fuck it, right? But yeah, so it's your first time on the show by yourself. I could introduce you because I know you well enough, but I will let you introduce yourself however you see fit to the audience.
Well, hello. My name is Konstantin. I am a member, I guess, of the Libertarian Party. I am a big fat nobody, but I do love me some books. My history is kind of a weird one on my journey to liberty. I had enough of modern music. It was just getting really, really bad, and just listening to the radio it was awful, and Pandora kept playing the same songs over and over. So I decided that I was just gonna pick up some books, and was becoming a man. I got married, the baby on the way, and decided I wanted to be the best man I could be. So I figured I'd start learning about philosophy, and that led me down the rabbit hole of economics. And well, I ended up reading some Rothbard. I ended up reading actually Adam Kokesh's book Freedom is the one that spoke loudest to me, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I ended up my favorite book, actually, and I encourage everybody to read this because it is literally my favorite book of all time. It's called Defending the Undefendable by Walter Block. It is such a fun read, especially if you're somebody that, I've been literally all over the political spectrum, everywhere from socialist to neocon, and Walter Block probably shook it all out of me, and brought me to the side of don't hurt people and don't take their stuff and leave it alone and it'll be fine.
So essentially, are you telling me like Katy Perry made you a libertarian?
Katy Perry.
Awful music. I was just.
Yeah. yes.
You don't like 4 chords rearranged into different orders over and over again with a little bit of synth mixed in?
I mean, I did for a while, but then I became an adult, so
That is such a lie. You became an adult. Okay.
I will never grow up.
And also, you did not encourage me to read the book Freedom. You tied me up and forced me to, essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I
yeah.
always tell people is so I first started becoming liberty curious, I guess, when I encountered Dave Smith on a podcast. Then um, I through a very indirect route, ended up meeting Mises Caucus people and Libertarian Party people in my local area, of which Konstantin was one of them, and joined like a little I guess with like a little like libertarian philosophy club meetup thing that we used to do.
The Freedom Forum.
Yeah, the Freedom Forum. We don't do that anymore. But they'd have meetups and stuff, and I was, as a former lefty who was curious about more, liberty leaning politics and stuff, I started attending and had fun talking with the people. Had no idea what I was getting into, because I still had an idea in my head that libertarian was essentially something something resembling a Ben Shapiro or a constitutional conservative, and not really understanding the full extent of the rabbit hole I was about to go down. Like I said, I was liberty curious. I'd started to learn about these ideas, but I hadn't fully embraced them. And then kept seeing all these memes, right? These memes are like taxation is theft. And I was kind of like, okay, I was like, I kind of got the concept of it. I was like, yeah, taxes are too high and they're obtrusive, and income tax is unconstitutional. And so, just one day I was like, taxation is theft. And I made a post in the forum. I was like, is all taxation is theft? And all hell broke loose. I think that's still up. Because I don't think the group ever got taken down. So I think that literally the conversation that made me a libertarian is still enshrined on Facebook for posterity's sake. But I don't know. Would you say? I mean, I think I went through all the motions. I mean, I went through Marauds and Warlords will take over. I don't know if I'm missing anything. But I remember the best part of that conversation was I kept, because you kept on saying, well, we don't need taxes for this, right? Or this. We can just and I was like, okay, but what about? I was like, okay, but there's got to be some place where there's some taxation, right? Like somewhere. And I just kept pressing you and kept pressing you. And I was like, I don't know. Your ideas make sense on the surface, but I don't know. It seems like you're not, including any role for any government anywhere, and that would be anarchy. And you were just like,
you can't say the A word.
Yeah. I think your literal response was like, yes. Yes, that is what I'm advocating for.
You caught me.
And then 6 hours of autistic screeching later, because I kept asking questions and asking questions. Then you gave me Adam Kokesh's ebook to listen to, and I wouldn't even get through that. I think every 5 minutes I was messaging you. I was like, no, this is bullshit. No, you're like, stop it. Listen to the book.
Keep going. It's like so I took my daughter to a planetarium for the first time, and this is actually her first time being in like a movie theater. And every like 5 seconds she's like, Dad, what's gonna happen next? And I'm like, they're gonna tell you. Just hang tight. They're gonna tell you. I promise you that they're gonna explain what they just said in a minute, because that's what this is about. It's explaining a thing. And that was Jacob listening to Freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I you know what's funny is that I actually never finished that. I got about about 2/3 of the way in. But that was mostly because about halfway in, it was a complete mind fuck. Because I think like the I don't know, first like quarter I was like, no. Then like from quarter to about halfway in, I just started to like the deep I got actually like in real time felt the wool being removed from my eyes, and like I like Neo when he starts to see the code in the Matrix and stuff, and I was like, no, I don't like this.
You begin to glitch.
No, it makes sense, but I don't like it. No. but I couldn't push it away. I was like, no, like it was like it was almost like an existential thing. And I don't know if all libertarians have this, but like the moment I realized the the true depravity and the true nature of the state, right? Like it's one thing to kind of be libertarian leaning and be like, "Oh, I would like some more freedom and, less taxes and all that." But you still kind of view the state as like a fundamental good, you know what I mean? And the minute that you not only get to the point where you no longer recognize the state is good, I mean, you recognize the state is not good, but you realize the full extent to which we are essentially just cattle to the state is I mean, for me, it was at least it was just like I was like okay, and and tomorrow, Donald Trump will come out and pull his zipper down, and the lizard will come out. Like it was, this was a precursor to my Alex Jones was right phase.
Turning the frogs gay.
That phase hasn't ended really.
No, it hasn't. I mean, for me, the experience was really uncomfortable. Like, it's like an existential crisis. And me too, about halfway through the book, I remember I had to leave work early one day. And I remember sitting at a red light at like 11 or 10:30 or something like that. No cars on the road. Middle of the day, no cars on the road. And I'm looking at this red light, and I came to the conclusion that this red light had more control over my right foot than I did. I came to the conclusion that if I decided that I'm just gonna go, because I'd been sitting at this light for a while, but if I just
Oh
go,
yeah.
then that will prompt a police officer to come have an interaction with me. And if I decided, now, almost anywhere in life, if there is an individual that I don't want to have an interaction with, I don't have to. I just walk away from them, and usually they don't follow. But if this police officer decides that he wants to have an interaction with me, I will be forced to stop, because if I don't, and I keep going, they will eventually use their vehicle as a weapon against me, and if I continue to resist, eventually I will die. And that conclusion was like the biggest existential crisis that I've like probably ever faced. And that's when like literally, same thing. Like the Matrix had just come undone. The the uh the whole world glitched, and I just realized like crap. This isn't freedom. This isn't what I was promised.
Nope. Nope. I remember going home to my wife that night, and she's just like, "What's wrong? You seem out of it." And I was just I felt like I was literally walking around, just waiting for like the walls to like collapse in on me. It's just like I don't even. Everything's fine.
The room's on fire. Everything's
Yeah,
fine.
everything's fine. I mean, it's like literally, like you go home and like I just realized how vulnerable. Like I was like I felt so exposed, like because like the state's kind of like that security blanket, right? And The Matrix is such a great movie for like these sort of archetypes and stuff because it's like I
Gen
think
Z, please go see that movie.
yeah, really. But like you almost like when Neo took the red pill and didn't realize what he was bargaining for, and then Cypher being the one who also didn't know who he was bargaining for, to the extent that he was like, no, I plug it back in. I felt better then, and like it's I don't know, like I mean I wasn't able to do that. I was just like I think because fundamentally I've always wanted to pursue truth over everything, but when that security blanket was taken away, it was like wow, this is some real shit. I mean I think, but it was part of what really spurred me on to like kind of like finish growing up in a sense. 'Cause I think before then, like I was playing at being an adult. I wasn't like really an adult. Like I didn't take things that seriously. I didn't take planning for my future that seriously. And then I realized like wait, this whole thing is a house of cards that like literally is just built on, threats of
Debt.
violence and coercion and debt. And yeah, I mean, like fuck, like it just completely shattered my paradigm, and it took me a while to kind of pick up the pieces and put it back. Then I think I was, you know, I was in cage stage mode for a while and just started asking, the million questions and reading all the books and watching all the podcasts and all that. But yeah, then I, became more mature and started to, I think once I kind of got done going through like the classic, pantheon of like libertarian literature, I was like, all right, I think I got this down, at least down, good enough for the most part. And I started to kind of think more about how it pertained to my religious views, because I had some kind of like intuitions that there was something there, but I didn't really know how to express it. So I kind of went back to the Bible and I just remember like going on Google and just typing in like Christianity and anarchy, or like Bible and anarchy, and and not really expecting anything, and then being surprised by how much what was actually there. You and I, although we're both religious, you have more of a uh, belief in Judaism, or like you like to tell me the how do you put it again when you're in your
The
mocking
original
way?
the original canon series.
Right, yeah, not the fan fiction. I think you call Christianity the fan fiction. um, yeah. So for those, I don't know. Did you have a similar thing though? I guess is what I wanted to get to. Like, did you, after you became a libertarian, go back to your religious views and sort of have any kind of efforts to reconcile those?
Yeah, so mine were a little bit different. So I didn't actually bury myself in the Bible. I mean, for a while there, I didn't know what to think, because it really put some weight on my relationship with God, because I had felt like I had I felt like I had eaten from the tree of knowledge. I felt like I ate that apple,
And you were
and
naked.
and I was yeah. You know what? That is such a good analogy.
It is, yeah.
I felt naked. I felt uncomfortable. I felt dumb, ashamed. All those weird feelings, and then I'm like, well, is God real? And I just I meditated on it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it some more, and I thought about it some more, and I came to the conclusion that um, a, it didn't matter, but b, the commandments are pretty clear, and there is only one being that is to rule over me, and that is God, and there is nothing in between. Um, so I that's kind of what just back to basics. The Ten Commandments, very
Yeah.
simple, and I'm like, okay, this
Yeah.
makes sense to me,
I mean,
and
the Ten Commandments is basically, I mean, like the first four are kind of about like God and proper worship and stuff like that, but the last six, are essentially the nap, maybe
yeah,
in extra steps, but it's don't hurt people and don't take their stuff, and the common libertarian trope, and you become an anarchist when you realize there's no exceptions to that, and it's like, and all right, that's kind of what started my journey, which led to this podcast. I was like, you know, yeah, I mean, it seems like the Ten Commandments wouldn't have exceptions either. You know what I mean? Like, don't murder, don't steal. Well, like, is there anywhere in the Bible where God says, unless you're in government, in which case, have at it? I was like, no. And then I remember, like, I don't know, you've ever read like First Samuel 8? Is like, it was like, that was like one of the first passages I stumbled upon. Where it was like, oh, not only does God say that not provide an exception, but he actually says, "Oh, if you get a king, he's going to do all this shit. It's going to be awful."
yeah,
I was like, "Crap!" I was like, and then I remember just being like, I kept thinking it couldn't be this simple. I was like, well, Christians and Jews have been statist forever. Like, how could they not see what's like so clearly obvious? And I was like, well, I mean, they've been, in the same way that education's been hijacked by the state, religion's often been hijacked by the state, unfortunately. And and it's in some ways, I think you and I have talked about this, but like you brought up the garden story, but I think in some ways, statism and authoritarianism, more broadly speaking, as sort of like a spirit of sorts, is kind of like the original sin
Mm.
in a way. And it's kind of like it's like man's desire to create his own order and to go to God and say, you know, I can defy your natural order and substitute my own um imposed order of right and wrong, which doesn't work because like there's only, I mean, we we have a free will of sorts, but we can't, and we can even create in the same way, I think, similar to how God is, because we're created in his image, but we can't create different versions of right and wrong.
Right.
And the desire to rebel against that natural order and to kind of like force our own control, to me, is like that's sort of like that like the sinful root of like statism and authoritarianism, is like is essentially, rebellion against uh God and his order, fundamentally.
Yeah, I mean I like to use the analogy, and I think this has helped a lot of people when they say, what is God, who is God, and how do you characterize God? And I always just say it's very simple. God's your father. That's
Yeah.
it. God's your father, and if you have a good father, he's going to let you scrape your knee every once in a while. He might not necessarily let you fall off a bridge. I don't think there's a lesson to learn there. But hey, don't do that thing. Hey, don't do that thing. Hey, if you do that thing, you're gonna get hurt.
All right. Yeah.
All right, I warned
Yep.
you.
Yep.
And it is what it is. And I think if history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes.
Hmm.
And I don't know how many times we can see very, very similar things happen throughout history. How many times does Rome have to fall?
Mm-hmm.
For people to realize that, hey, maybe instead of trying to do the same thing and expect a different result, maybe we try something different.
This time democracy building will work.
It's real communism has never been tried.
Yeah. No, it's just like it's a failure to accept, personal responsibility. It's like people don't want, like, I think what people are fundamentally, and like I remember this was what I had in like those early days of my existential crisis. I was realizing, wow, like I literally own myself. Like I literally am like, it's just me. Like no one else is going to take care of me except me, and I have to be the one who does what is necessary to provide for the needs and the security for myself and my family. Because the state's not really doing it. If anything, the state's the reason why more than half of the dangers that I'll potentially have to face exist in the first place. So, but I think people don't like that. Like people, like they don't want to be responsible for themselves. They want. This is what the Hebrews said in 1 Samuel 8. They literally told Samuel, "We want a king who will solve our problems and fight our battles for us." It's like, but you can't do that. And that's what people are still doing the same thing. It's like, no, we don't want the hard work of taking care of ourselves. We want something else to exist that does it all for us, and it denies both like morality and just like basic uh like economic literacy, because it's just like, God can make something come from nothing, but people, despite what modern economists try to tell you, the Fed cannot create wealth from nothing. That
No,
doesn't work.
just money.
They can create more of the paper bills. I guess in a sense they're creating a product, right? So they are taking scarce resources from from the natural world and converting them into something. The market value on that is certainly plummeting, and the demand is probably soon going to plummet.
And here's the problem with Keynesians. Here's what they don't get. Inflation is great for everyone but you. So when they worry about the 1%, these super wealthy, the wealth disparities and what have you, all of those people are wealthy not because they have lots of dollars. In fact, the wealthiest one of the wealthiest people in the world is also one of the most indebted people in the world. The I think it's like the CEO of Oracle. He has like a bajillion dollars in Oracle stock, and he took out a fat loan against that stock, and now he has the stock and a bajillion dollars. So the existence of a rich man's game is literally the result of central planning, government focused economics, and the central bank, and all of these problems that we have are the direct result of massive amounts of government intervention in our daily lives, and that our money's just not real. It's
Yeah.
it's not a it used to be a storage of labor, right? If your labor was more valuable than somebody else's, you got more money, and that's just how it worked. You got more gold, whatever the currency was, whatever people were trading in place of their labor. But now they could just print more money.
Yeah.
So who gets wealthier? The rich people who have the assets can continue to sell those assets for higher amounts of money. And meanwhile, we are stuck at the same job, earning the same salary. Oh, maybe we got a 2% raise last year. Sweet. I'm still upside down because the inflation was 7%.
Yeah. And if the banks get a bunch of cheap money from the Fed and lend too much of it out, and the economy crashes, doesn't matter because they just get bailed out. And you know what the problem is? They just need more money.
Oh, yeah, they failed because they just didn't have enough.
Right.
They
Yeah.
were too successful. They were too big to fail.
And it's just like we have such a creditor economy, and it's like, I mean, I'm not saying that there's no role for credit at all, but it's like you don't credit isn't wealth. You know what I mean? Like our money isn't represented by anything of value other than, well, really, and I actually got this from Sam Cedar during his debate with Dave Smith. I remember from all the way back then. It was very telling because he kind of said the quiet part out loud. He said, because Dave said, in the dollar, which doesn't have any real value or utility, and Sam was like, that's not true. The dollar has value because it's what you use to pay your taxes. I didn't like that didn't strike me at the time, but then like I went back and re-listened to it like a year or two ago, and I was just like, oh wow, like that literally is the quiet part out loud about Keynesian economics. It's just like taxes, like the dollar literally has no value except that you need it to pay your taxes. Oh, and if you don't pay your taxes and use this currency, the government will come after you and lock you in a cage.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what happened.
I mean, it's what they're already doing.
Like until Bitcoin came around, that was basically it. Bitcoin's given people a little bit of freedom from that, although they're doing everything they can to make that difficult, even with the freedom Bitcoin offers.
Yeah, and it's really weird because now they're claiming that. So it used to be that you didn't have to pay taxes on things that never touch the dollar because the IRS only has authority to tax dollar bills, Federal Reserve notes. So as long as your Bitcoin stays as Bitcoin and you never put it in US dollars, you don't have to pay taxes on it. Okay, cool. So now if I decide I want to buy a thing with those taxes, let's say an automobile, or those taxes, sorry, with that Bitcoin, and let's say I want to buy an automobile with that Bitcoin, and the seller and I both agree on cryptocurrency for the transaction, I still have to pay taxes on it because when I register the car, apparently there's a value derived, and I have to pay taxes on it, and he'll have to pay taxes on the income, and I'll have to pay taxes on the sales tax. When did they just made that up? And we all went, oh, okay, it makes sense. That's the world that we live in. Oh, shucks.
Do you hate road, Konstantin? Like,
I
how
hate
could you
roads.
be so selfish as to buy cars and not, pay your fair share to make sure there's roads to drive your cars on? I mean,
I live in Pennsylvania. I hate roads. I had to replace the suspension in both of my cars.
we don't have roads. We have these weird lumpy stretches of asphalt that aren't maintained.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I stopped debating roads with people, because then all I just have been doing is just I said, you want roads? Cool. Let's take a look outside.
Yeah.
Is that good? Are they doing is that what you had in mind? Like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Look at any like privately owned thing. Like the oh my gosh. There's a town called Lake Mead here in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
and I love that place. It's a private like it's a private town essentially. It's a neighborhood, it's an HOA, but like step up. And it is gorgeous. The roads are wonderful. They have their own security. They have, as far as I'm aware, no crime. Everybody pretty much gets along, except for I'm sure there's some, politics that they deal with. But it's an awesome town. They have their own fire department. They have their own resources that they pay into, and they share that among each other, and
What? They
it
have to
works.
pay for it.
Yeah, well, they agreed to it. They signed that contract. They weren't born into it, and it works, and it works well. Now, what really stinks is that they pay to live in that town, and then they also
Have to pay
pay.
taxes on top of it.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, that's almost as bad as when like you realize there are certain, not certain, like, a lot of instances where dollars are taxed multiple times. Where it's just like, I mean, I remember people complaining about this when so many people went on unemployment, and then it's like, this is your money that you stored away, and then the government gives it back to you, and they're like, we're gonna tax it. It's like, wait, this, this was something you made me do involuntarily in the first place. You took my money to go into this insurance fund in case I ever became unemployed. Then you give it back, and you're like, we gotta tax it.
yeah,
That'd be like going to my bank and being like, I'm going to, have a savings fund, and every time I withdrew money from the savings fund, it charged me a fee. I mean, like, I guess if you voluntarily agree to that because you're an idiot, I mean, I guess whatever. But like, most people would not probably agree to those sort of terms just to use their own money. I mean, even like regular private insurance payouts, other than the government imposed taxes, like you have car insurance and you need to use your car insurance. They go like, okay, well, we'll pay you can have a deductible, but there's no like tax on that you have to pay. Um, but and I guess in the deductible is even something you have control over because you can pick $100
hmm
deductible, $500 deductible. Like you have options, you have choices. It's something you can, and there's competition driving prices down, and like car insurance is one of those few frontiers that still hasn't been so destroyed by government overregulation. Like people don't, I think young people today don't realize how health insurance used to be just as easy to get and cheap to get as car insurance. Like
yeah,
I can, I mean, I was, like 20, like 1920 when things started to change, but I still remember when like health insurance was like $30 a month.
yeah. Health insurance you can actually look it up. There's a chart that compares the healthcare providers against administrative workers and the quantities of who works where, and the amount of administrative employees in the healthcare industry has just skyrocketed after the 1970s. What happened in 1971? But but healthcare used to be really cheap in this country, and now it's not at all. To the point where I think off the coast of Los Angeles there was a project to put a hospital on, like, to make an island and put a hospital on that island and then fly patients from LA to that hospital because it would have been cheaper to build that than it would have been to just make a hospital in LA. You know, it's ridiculous how it's gotten. And they're, what's their solution? Oh, well, we've identified a problem. The government has ruined the healthcare industry, so that's why we need single payer healthcare. Like,
Mm. And it's like people just like if you described these things in the honest terms, be like, hey, what if this thing you really want, there was only one provider for, they had a complete monopoly on it, they could charge whatever they want, they had no oversight or accountability except like people that they appointed to oversee and hold them accountable. And if you don't use this service, you're shit out of luck. People
Well,
will be
they'll
like, that's
charge you for
awful.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or yeah, that's the thing. You get charged even if you don't use it. That's the other problem. I mean, like the opposite of the tragedy of the commons is the tragedy of like, I don't want this and too bad. We've decided you need it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's people wouldn't and yeah, it's so important to always like I know some people kind of go, "Oh, stop going around saying taxation is theft." It's like, well, we should say more than that. Like we should be saying, not just saying taxation is theft. We should be really just going to people and being like, "Listen, um, I am morally opposed to abortion. Imagine something you're morally opposed to. Now imagine I went into your house and at gunpoint said you have to pay for the thing that you're morally opposed to. Would you be okay with that? If you wouldn't, okay, well, that's what you're making millions of Americans do. And, or if there's something you don't want, like let's say I don't, I'm trying to think of an example. Like let's say I don't want to use Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security. Why can't I opt out of those?
Why can't you save money for yourself?
Why can't I collect my own rainwater, Konstantin?
Right?
that pisses me off so much. Um, yeah, no, it's
It's
silly.
not your water, it's our water.
Right. No, and that's why I mean, like, I remember when I first got into this, I was just like, I still had I thought I was like, I looked at the political sphere as a very nuanced thing, and now it's just like, no, it's ANCAP and liberty, and then just varying flavors of communism. That's all it is. Like, and I know that's a meme. People make fun of us, but it's literally true. Like, tell me what the difference is between communism and thinking that, like you all have to pay your fair share to live in the society. Like you hear. I remember watching uh an interview Ayn Rand did back when she was still alive, and it was so funny hearing the interviewer. It's like like an interview. Like I mean, it's like black and white. Like it's back from a time before you would think that like there were, you would think of the typical American as like even if they were more, liberal leaning, they would be conservative in today's standards. You know what I mean? But
Sure.
even then, like the language that he was using against Rand, he was like, but don't you think that we should all contribute to the common good and we should seek to make things more? I was just like, holy shit, like nationalism and statism has always just been watered down communism, and communism was really just statism, but saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah. I mean, I used that argument on you. How many times did I call you racist? Why do you hate black people? Why don't you think that they can make it to the DMV? Why don't you think that they can, take care of themselves? Is it the color of their skin?
Yeah, you called me racist and communist a lot on that particular exchange. And it's funny. It's funny to go back and look at my answers now. I'm just like, oh god. And I remember like literally my first thing. Like it's so painful to go back and like my first thing was, well, what about roads? And even you were like, oh,
My
really?
roads. Because
Like yeah.
I mean, we've all been there, right? That was my first thing. I have a friend who actually introduced me to the idea of libertarianism because I was a gung ho neocon for a while because I was excited to be a neocon because I felt like I'd uncovered the real truth because like I live in a rural area and
I used to be
America.
a neocon too. I voted for Hillary Clinton.
Ooh. Ooh. So it's never that bad.
She's the real neocon.
Luckily, when I was in my neocon phase, I didn't really have a chance because it was like Romney. I think would have been the choice. I'm like, no, he's not conservative enough.
Right.
If I wasn't a libertarian, I probably would have been really revved up to vote for Trump.
Yeah, I was so caught up in leftist propaganda that I literally thought we were going to be in nuclear war by like June of 2016 or 27. Yeah, you get to. I always get confused. So it's like the first year they're serving is an odd year. So yeah, like 2017, I guess is when I thought that the world was going to end, and I was just like 6 months in. I was like, okay, no, nothing's happened. Also, now everyone's racist. That's kind of weird. And yeah, I mean, I kind of don't like him anymore, but I kind of fell into like watching like Dave Rubin and stuff because I kind of had a similar feeling. I was just like, I was like, the left doesn't make sense anymore, which seems like a very paradoxical thing to say right now because it's like, when did the left make sense? But at the
Yeah.
time, I thought they used to make sense. I mean, I was kind of like, I was like a Bill, I was something between like a Bill Maher and Democrat, and but kind of leaning towards Bernie Sanders, even though I didn't quite agree with all of his policies, but um, I liked his. See, I always had that libertarian streak, and I liked how Bernie, he was pointing to like, I need to take money out of politics, and like I cared about that. I was like, I don't like corruption in politics. We need to take money out of politics. What I didn't realize is that the only way to do that is to end politics. There's no other way to do it, and it's funny because like what made me realize that was a debate Ben Shapiro did, and to this day I don't understand how Ben Shapiro can't like. I don't know how he could ever argue against anarcho-capitalism because he's essentially made the art because like he did a debate with Cenk Uygur, and Cenk was like,
That
"We need
was
to take money out
awesome.
of we need to take money out of politics," and he's like, "Well, you could like how? Like we'll pass a law." He's like, "They'll just do it anyway. You won't know about it." They all these backhand deals and stuff, and I was like, "All right," and now I'm just like, "Well, yeah, that's true," which is why like so what do you do about it then? Like the only logical conclusion is that like you have to just throw the ring into the 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 volcano. Like I don't know what else you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and it's a shame that uh, I actually I get a lot of hate for this in libertarian circles. I actually really like Ben Shapiro the vast majority of the time. He's not perfect. Only I am, but but the reality is, he's a really really bright guy. But then like, and he'll say like all the right things, and then like, but he's not a fan of legalizing machine guns. And like, I'll make the argument all the way that the Second Amendment extends to nuclear arms. Um, but so Ben Shapiro's not great on everything, and I don't know why he doesn't.
Including making his wife wet. No.
I mean, they've got, I don't know how many kids are they up to, three?
I know. It's such a funny joke though. I
Yeah,
make it.
yeah. I mean, like of all the criticisms you can have, like when you make that criticism, that like, okay, cool. So you don't have an intellectual argument, so you're gonna go like, at least my ad hominem is on the point. I remain on the topic at hand. I don't know, like, well, what about the bedroom? That's anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I
but
agree with you. I tend to like listening to I like listening to most of the Daily Wire people. I'm not a big fan of with a Clavin. He kind of bores me. Although he had an episode with Tom Woods years ago, which I went back and listened to, and was pretty pretty decent, I guess. I feel like conservatives are getting more based today, partly because of Trump. Although they're still way too like, you know, licking the doing all the fellatio to the boot of Trump. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
but they, I mean, it's weird to think that conservatives now are based on the FBI and all the intelligence agencies
they're
and stuff
finally
like that.
realizing that I like to use this analogy. Government is a hammer. It's not a screwdriver. It's not a drill. It's not a spoon. It's not a fork. It's not even a knife. It's a hammer, and it only does one thing. So if if you are not the person wielding the hammer, you have to trust the person wielding the hammer. And the reality is, there is so much evil that can come from this hammer that I'm not super big fan of this hammer even being around in the first place. At the very least, it should be a very small hammer.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I thought would be interesting to talk about, what is your approach? Because obviously it worked on me, and I think for the most part that's an anomaly. People don't usually win arguments on social media, let alone actually convince someone to change their mind. What is your strategy when you enter into any kind of debate, whether it's spoken or online? Like how do you I mean I know part of it is sort of like making fun of people to get them to think. But I mean what's your thought process, and how do you how do you engage with people, and what kind of I mean, I know I'm your biggest success story, but
You are.
have you had any others?
So I'm not sure how many I've had in the sense of how many people I've actually really lassoed into the Libertarian Party, at least. But I, the people that are actually serious about talking to you, those are the good ones that you can actually have real conversations with. Usually, people just like taking shots at each other. And what I actually initially is I actually avoid that unless I know the person personally. Like if like knowing you, I've interacted with you, I know who you are, and I know that you take doing the right thing very seriously. So if I actually call you racist, you're gonna think, "Oh man, am I?" Because you're a good person, and so somebody who doesn't necessarily care about being a good person, that's not going to be persuasive. But to those people, maybe they think they're really, really smart. So then what I'll do is I'll make them feel stupid. Because then I'll ask them, like, well, what? You can't figure out how to save for retirement? What? You can't figure out how to teach your kids? What? Oh, so you don't care about your kids. You just want to send them away to a government liberal brain rotting factory for 8 hours a day. And then they come home and then they don't know what gender they are. Is that so? Like, you don't care about your kids. So, is that, and those are, if you're going to use ad hominem, you're going to take shots and you're going to be abrasive, you have to be abrasive towards the things that matter to people. So if they really, really care about their kids, okay, well, tell them that they're sending their kids to an indoctrination camp. And then they start thinking about it and go, oh man, I think I am. My favorite one is when I talk about baby boomers and they tell you how self-sufficient they are and how hard everything was for them, and and now we're all a bunch of sissies. They took the guns out of schools and they did all this and they did all that, and I'm like, so you're telling me that when I was in 5th grade I was responsible for these decisions? You think as a 5th grader I had leverage to decide whether or not we were going to have a rifle team at my school? Like, no, that was you guys. Oh, and then they think about it. And then they realize, like, oh, hey, we're hating on our own kids.
Not to mention, it's still them, because they're still the ones who are in charge of the government, because they won't let, like, other than, like, your rare exception, like, you have, like, some people like AOC and stuff, but for the most part, like, it's all boomers and the really old Gen Xers who are still running the government. Like,
yeah,
they're still like, you guys, like, we're not, like, millennials didn't screw up the government. The boomers did.
Yeah, and they still are.
And you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. Ah, it makes me so angry.
There's actually there's a book. Yeah, I love my audiobooks. There's a book called A Generation of Psychopaths or Sociopaths, and it's written by this guy who's basically he's like a hedge fund manager, and he is not a right wing dude. He is very much so a Keynesian guy, because it provides him an advantage, because when the market is manipulated, you can kind of predict those manipulations and you can make money off of it. So this guy, like, again, not a right wing guy, but he goes through the baby boomers as a whole and looks at their voting patterns and looks at their how they did things, and takes that and puts it up against a symptom of a psychopath, and do these behaviors match this? And the conclusion is yes. The baby boomers were always super really gung ho to go to war, but they had really low enlistment numbers. Like, they're the baby boomers will be the first people to tell you that, oh, you need to save your money and you need to plan a budget and this, that, and the other thing.
I'm gonna spend it all.
Right. Well, but they they had more they had massive bankruptcies and credit scores. Credit scores had to be invented because baby boomers kept screwing things up so bad. Credit scores didn't exist before the 90s. They used to just look at things and they'd be like, oh, okay, well, here's your income, here's your whatever. Okay, cool, yeah, here's your car. And then, they'll file for bankruptcy. And then the best part was, I remember hearing the story from, an older person I was just talking to about it. He said bankruptcy was the best thing in the world because you file for bankruptcy, and then they know that you can't file for bankruptcy for another 7 years. So your credit was perfect. You could borrow whatever you want. And I'm hearing this, I'm like, I can't do that. I absolutely can't do that because they had trashed the market so many times. Those tricks don't work anymore. Houses are so much more expensive than they've ever been because boomers. It wasn't me when that housing market collapsed. I was 18. Like, I wasn't buying. I didn't buy a $400,000 house. I was still living with my parents, and but who collapsed the market? The Gen Xers, but there's only like 4 or 5 Gen Xers in all of like the country. So I'll blame the baby boomers because there aren't enough Gen Xers to really cause much problems.
I truthfully think that Gen X isn't even a real generation. It's just like Gen Xers either fall into the camp of just being the younger boomers, or the really young Gen Xers are really just like old millennials.
Yeah, right.
Oh God. All right. Well, we're running a little bit late here just because of how late we started, and usually I'd go a little bit longer, but I have things to attend to, including getting up for work tomorrow. But yeah, man, this is fun. We will have to do this again sometime because we still have like a million things we could still talk about. But I don't know. I usually ask people to give their plugs at this point, but you're a mystery man.
No, so as far as plugs, if you want to know what I think you should support, I think you should support the Libertarian Party. I think you should support the Mises Caucus. And if you want to give your money to a gun rights organization, I highly recommend the Firearms Policy Coalition, the FPC. These are amazing people. These are people that are actually trying to preserve and restore our gun rights. Joshua Prince is one of the bigger guys there, and he's sued the state Pennsylvania quite a few times, and he is probably the reason why we don't have to register paperweights in Pennsylvania as firearms. So, thanks, Joshua Prince.
Yeah, no, next time you're on, we should definitely get into guns more because that's definitely one of your areas of expertise. So, not that I own any guns; they all got lost in some weird boating accident. Very tragic.
My boats.
Yeah, right. We need to ban boats, causing all these tragic gun losses. Go fishing for guns. My nearest lake.
We need to ban water. Water is the true problem.
I just don't understand why they just ban global warming and ban COVID. Like, Jesus, guys, like just get on it.
Problem solved.
Awesome. Well, hey man, thanks for coming on. Last minute. Next time we will definitely try to do a bit longer and have a bit more of a plan going in. But now you've been introduced to my audience, and people know that you're responsible for. And again, I should maybe next time we should almost go. It'd be fun to go back to that and like screen share it and go look through it. Actually, the whole conversation. Because I kid you not, this man literally bullied me into being a libertarian.
I'm probably gonna feel bad.
It's all good. But yeah, thanks for coming on, man, and thanks everybody for watching. And catch you next time.